Hello folks, and welcome to Jack Reviews Musicals. My name is Jack and I am a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri, and this is my YouTube channel where I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions that I see in the greater St. Louis area. And as you can see, I am super excited for this because Tesseract Theatre invited me to see their opening night performance of their production of Legally Blonde, which is currently playing at the Marcel Theatre from now until the 21st of December of 2025. This is actually the latest in a string of shows from Tesseract Theatre that focus on strong female protagonists. A string that began this time last year with their production of Anastasia, which I reviewed for the channel, and it won the St. Louis Theatre Circle Award for Outstanding Production of a Musical. In between Anastasia and Legally Blonde, Tesseract also presented two non-musical plays, a production of the classic kitchen drama Steel Magnolias and the modern hyper-political farce POTUS, or Behind Every Great Dumbass Are Seven Women Trying to Keep Him Alive. Tesseract's next musical will also be female-driven, the stage adaptation of Alanis Morissette's classic concept album Jagged Little Pill. As far as programming is concerned, Legally Blonde is actually a pretty ideal follow-up to Anastasia musically, because Anastasia is a serious historical drama with a sweeping, romantic, symphonic score, whereas Legally Blonde is a bubbly, romantic comedy with an upbeat pop-rock score. But despite their tonal and musical differences, both Anastasia and Legally Blonde are great, relevant stories about young women discovering their independence and trying to make their way in a male-dominated world. But Legally Blonde has a little bit more of a leg up because it is such a modern story, the score is so upbeat, and it's a romantic comedy. It's a more digestible formula for a wider audience. Legally Blonde is the musical adaptation of the 2001 novel of the same name by Amanda Brown. Movie producer Mark Platt proceeded to get his grubby little hands on Brown's manuscript and use that as the basis for the MGM hit movie, which was released around the same time as the book, promoting synergy. Like a mouse! The movie starred Reese Witherspoon in her breakout performance opposite Jennifer Coolidge and Victor Garber. The musical premiered in 2007 with a score by Bat Boys composer Lawrence O'Keefe, who co-composed the songs with his wife Nell Benjamin, featuring a book by screenwriter Heather Hatch. The musical would explode in popularity after its pro shot was aired on MTV right around its Tony Awards campaign. Ironically, the show would not end up winning any awards, probably because the Tony voters could not hear a damned thing over the hordes of screaming fangirls that were in the audience. Since then, Legally Blonde has become a huge hit in high schools and community theaters because it is popular with younger crowds, and Tesseract Theatre is known for producing shows that are geared more towards a younger crowd. But I think they chose to do Legally Blonde not because it's popular, but rather for the reason why it became popular. The story centers around Elle Woods, who was just about to graduate at the top of her class in the University of California, Los Angeles with a bachelor's in fashion merchandising, while also serving as the president of UCLA's Delta Nu chapter. Elle is a very accomplished student with a very high intellect, but nobody takes her seriously. She's outwardly perceived as this stereotypical blonde valley girl, purely because her personality is naturally effervescent, as well as her unabashed femininity and acumen for all things fashion and beauty. One such person who thinks about Elle in this way is her now ex-boyfriend Warner Huntington III, who comes from an extremely wealthy political and legal family. Warner's breaking up with Elle so that he can go to Harvard Law serves as the story's inciting incident, made very dramatic by having it take place at a fancy restaurant on the night Elle thought Warner was proposing. The entire opening number, oh my god you guys, was wholly dedicated to Elle and her Delta Nu sisters preparing for the engagement. And what makes this even more devastating is that Warner proceeds to humiliate Elle by telling her that she isn't serious enough for his aspirations to practice law. In his words, "You're a Marilyn, not a Jackie." What follows then is a 12-day long pity party, where Elle sinks to the low of eating Milky Ways. Elle starts developing a pit in her stomach from Warner talking smack about her. So she decides to do something about it. She decides to transfer to Harvard Law in an effort to try and win Warner back. After months of studying, evaluation, resisting the temptations of spring break at UCLA, and pulling off a killer dance routine at the admissions office, she's accepted into Harvard, surprisingly. In Elle's words, what, like it's hard? At that point, Legally Blonde starts to become more of a fish out of water story, turning into a valley girl in New England's Ivy League, pretty much. In fact, the name Legally Blonde actually comes from an epithet that is directed towards Elle, uttered by Professor Callahan, a vicious law professor who believes that lawyers should be nothing less than sharks sniffing out blood in the water. He even has a whole song about it of the same name. This culture clash is only confirmed by Warner and his new girlfriend, Vivian Kensington, and she, off rip, thinks that Elle does not have what it takes to survive Harvard. A hairdresser named Paulette Bonafonte, who runs a salon called The Hair Affair, actually affirms Elle's abilities and instills in her the confidence needed to stand up to Vivian, which she does, but unsuccessfully. So unsuccessful that Elle ends up being humiliated in public again. And now she's totally left in the dumps. That is until she's rescued by Emmett Forrest, Professor Callahan's teaching assistant. Emmett sees Elle as a kindred spirit, seeing how they are both attending Harvard and studying law purely because they have, in his words, a chip on their shoulder. So, with a little bit of a hurdle getting started, and after some getting used to, Emmett does give Elle the tools required to succeed at Harvard, coming to a point where Elle really starts applying herself, and her hard work pays off. Callahan brings Elle on as an intern on a high-profile murder case at his law firm. And so the rest of the show turns into Elle proving that she is, in fact, a great lawyer. That in order to be happy, she doesn't need Warner. Everything that makes her seem like a blonde girl stereotype on the outside are actually the things that make her a strong, independent woman. Will Bonfiglio, the director of Tesseract's production, says that Legally Blonde is a musical for people who have been underestimated, who have been told that you are too much of this or not enough of that, who have had to fight to be seen and heard and respected, to challenge us all to be true to ourselves and compassionate to one another. He says about the show, it may appear fun and silly on the surface, but Legally Blonde contains substantial emotional depth, inspiring us to not make assumptions about people, and to not change who we are to fit in. And I agree with Bonfiglio's assessments. Legally Blonde is a musical that uses a romantic comedy plot to reveal pretty potent social commentary about sexism in both law and in general society, about how people are persecuted and taken advantage of because they are a certain way. We see this happening all the time to anyone who has been marginalized. In fact, I would actually make the argument that Legally Blonde is Bat Boy with a bit more heart to it. It's more consistently funny than Legally Blonde, and the music and libretto are much more artistically interesting. Now, don't get me wrong, the vast majority of the jokes and the songs in Legally Blonde are great, but there are some jokes in it that really don't stick the landing, and some of the songs really just aren't that memorable. This show was definitely written with a more commercial appeal in mind. But Legally Blonde is a musical that I come back to again and again, and I enjoy it every single time, because the experience of watching it is so energizing, and it also ends on a more optimistic message than Bad Boy, that individuals can have a destiny beyond what society programs for them, and that no one should ever have to sell themselves short. Even though I do think some of the songs drag, Lawrence O'Keefe and Nell Benjamin's score is awesome. These songs have become the archetypal up-tempo contemporary musical theater tracks. Oh my god, you guys, What You Want, Ireland, So Much Better, The Bend and Snap, and They're Right There, or Gay or European, probably the most memed on song in the whole show. And in Tesseract's production, the musical direction by Larry Pry gives this iconic score its due. His conducting was exciting and quite literally unobtrusive. Because they're staging the show in a small space, the Marcel Theatre, Tesseract made the smart decision of keeping the band in a separate room from the playing space, pumping in their sound via stereo. It allowed a lot of flexibility from the sound design by Jacob Baxley, balancing out the sound levels as he saw fit, which was wise. There were some lyrics that I didn't catch. Some of the actors struggled with enunciation on opening night, and some superfans were cheering for literally every meme that came out of this show. But I know the material so well that I honestly can't fault Tesseract for it. They really do have its energy in the right place if people are still cheering like those screaming hordes in the pro shot. Tesseract's band was led by Larry Pry on the keys alongside Becca and Braden Bissett, Chuck Evans on the violin, Mary Jewel Wiley and Leah Gerdes on the reeds, Joe Winters on the drums, Matt Coble on guitar, and Jonah Larson on the bass. Something that Tesseract really marketed heavily about this production is that it was a radical reimagining of Legally Blonde. A bold, fresh take with inventive staging where the comedy and camp sit right alongside raw emotion, grit, and vulnerability. Director Will Bonfiglio does cultivate a 50-50 split between the campiness of the romantic comedy proceedings, like the first 20 minutes of the show alone are camp overload, and the authenticity of the characters and situations. Bonfiglio's blocking uses every inch of the Marcel Theatre's playing space, even doing a thing or two to add a lot of dynamism to the small venue. He worked with choreographer Joe Palisock to turn the Act 1 finale So Much Better into this quintessential contemporary musical theater dance number, which I have not seen any production of Legally Blonde do. Joe Palisock does a great job too of adapting the dance sequences for the Marcel size, while retaining that pure fun energy the material has to offer. The cheerleading sequence in What You Want, the hip-hop and the bend and snap. There's jump roping in the Act 2 opener, Whipped into Shape. Opening night, a couple of the ensemble members struggled for the life of them to get the jump ropes to work with them. And trust me, I get it. I won a jump rope endurance contest, so with all of the training with that jump rope that I had to do, I totally sympathize. It is more than made up for, though, by the use of Irish river dancing. Like the score, the dancing is very diverse, and Palisock manages to hit all of the right beats in all the right places with movement that really captivates the audience. Even the stage tableaus that are created by Will Bonfiglio, they are so striking, particularly in the way that he places the ensemble during What You Want and They're Right There. His use of the ensemble was super effective, considering this production has a cast of 17, the smallest ensemble I've seen for Legally Blonde. He has most of the cast playing multiple roles, and everyone switches between them rather comfortably. A lot of that credit, though, has to go to costume designer Carly Uding, whose designs fit the quick change demands very well. And each costume is so distinct, you never have a hard time telling who is who at any given moment. And they are so full of character. It's a masterclass in storytelling through clothes. The reveal of Elle's engagement dress in the opening number was greeted with thunderous cheers and applause. The journey of Emmett's costumes, from being a very homey nerd to a snazzy gentleman, was very satisfying. Paulette's flair is so authentic to hairdressers that I actually know. There's a character in the show named Enid Hoops. She's a fellow law student who's portrayed as this very stereotypical lesbian liberal, and her combat activist chic is an outfit that I have seen so many times. The same can be said for the Delta Nu sisters, who all wear clothes that are actually seen and worn by sorority women in real life. Even the use of wigs was smart. Sarah Jean Dowling created a custom blonde wig for the actor who plays Elle, Gray Seidel, and it looks gorgeous. Dowling created another custom wig for Katie Orr as Enid, when she has to get her hair permed up for a crucial moment in the climax. And Dowling made a permed wig that matched Katie Orr's real hair, which is dyed green with black roots. Will Bonfiglio really did have a very strong vision for how, as a director, to maintain the spark of Legally Blonde inside a smaller arena. One of the best ways that he thought of doing so is through the set, designed by Brittany Gunn. This production only had two big major set pieces, and they were mounted to the floor. They're raised daises that were painted by David Pisoni to look like those darkly lacquered wooden daises that you typically see on college campuses. One of them is center stage, the other is upstage left. Those were effectively used in scenes that required elevated sightlines, like the admissions office in What You Want, Professor Callahan's lecture hall, the courtroom, Elle taking center stage in So Much Better, the bend and snap sequence, and many more. The big thing that makes the set design for Tesseract's production very distinguished, the two walls on the sides of the playing space are lined with shelves. These shelves have lamps above them that are lit up individually, coordinated by lighting designer Morgan Brennan. These shelves are lined with props and other things hanging on the walls that are grouped together on each shelf in categories, so that when an individual lamp lights them up, we, the audience, suspend our disbelief that we're now in a different location. That is extremely creative. On one shelf, there's liquor bottles and solo cups for the college party where Vivian humiliates Elle. Photos of the girls from Delta Nu, photographed by production photographer Florence Flick. Delta Nu and Harvard banners and hats. A shelf of hair care supplies for the hair affair. Elle's dorm room has a shelf full of crushed Red Bull cans. And it's augmented by furniture such as a salon chair, benches, a table, two traveling clothing racks for the mall. One of my favorite touches was that hanging up on the wall was a roll of bathroom tissue. During the trial that serves as the climax, the courtroom travels to a bathroom to exhibit important evidence, and the court clerk pulls down the tissue from the roll to her level and proceeds to use it as scribing paper. Stuff like that is great. Brittany Gunn's set was so smartly realized, it actually has the effect of looking like the common room of a sorority. So many little touches and props with an attention to detail that is unmatched. I did not have the time after the show to actually stay and look at it all. So there's probably a lot of stuff that I missed. You really do have to see this for yourself. It is a marvel of production design. It really makes this world that Tesseract has created feel so lived in. Along with the lamps, the rest of the lights by Morgan Brennan are nice too. They're bright and colorful. They switch between the bright pinks of Elle's world to the harsh whites of Harvard, the warm glows of the hair affair, the deep emotional blues during the introspective moments. There's even green and orange lights shown when Paulette is fantasizing about Ireland. But as always, the strongest point of any Tesseract production is the casting. Tesseract is probably the theater company that is the best at practicing what they preach in terms of casting actors who are actually diverse and reflect on what St. Louis is as a city, which emboldens the show's message of inclusivity. First is Woods, Elle, played by the always resplendent Gray Seidel. Tesseract's creative directors Brittany Gunn and Sarah Bauckham describes Elle as bold, funny, complicated, and totally human. And that's what Seidel exactly brings to the table. Elle has been Gray Seidel's dream role for ages, and the honesty of her acting, the enthusiasm of her stage presence, and the clarity of her vocal performance really shows that she has the talent to back up that ambition. Sydel has the poise required to portray Elle's natural charms, like you believe that she is the kind of person to light up a room. But she also has the confidence of Elle's inner strength and intelligence. You believe too that Elle has the personality that would land her in these situations. She makes the moments where Elle proves her detractors wrong look effortless. I love the arc that Sydel's Elle goes through, reacting to the traumatic things that happen to her. In the beginning, when Warner breaks up with her, Sydel starts the show ugly crying, practically throwing a tantrum. When Vivian humiliates her at that party, Elle is shown having the wit to outplay her and then rebound from the embarrassment. Then, in Act 2, spoiler alert and trigger warning, Professor Callahan sexually assaults Elle, and it's a traumatic scene. And Sydel shows a great deal more restraint here, portraying genuine shock and terror and profound sadness in a performance that's really quiet and subtle. She really sells that drama of Elle being taken advantage of in a way that makes it all the more satisfying when it's resolved in the climax. This was an Elle that I was rooting for from beginning to end. Grace Sydel was ideal casting. Ditto for Kevin Corpuz as Emmett. This is definitely a role that is very much up Kevin Corpuz's wheelhouse. The quirky, socially awkward, unconventionally attractive romantic lead. But he aces that type with an amiable stage presence and easygoing charisma that makes his journey from social assassin to social butterfly really compelling. His rendition of Chip on My Shoulder is achingly real, full of the weariness and optimism of someone who was given no breaks in life. I love how Corpuz gave Emmett this geniality that makes it easy for us to see how Emmett views Elle as a kindred spirit, and how open Sydel's performance is to make us believe that Elle and Emmett do have chemistry. I love the secret handshake that they come up with. I love the little in-jokes that they make between each other. Grace Sydel and Kevin Corpuz are two of my favorite local actors in St. Louis, especially when they are in shows together. These are performers with firecracker talent, chemistry, and wit. It makes me continue to love them in everything they're in, and this was no exception. But now we have a new debut artist in the main cast, Aditi Sitharaman as Vivian. And man, it's one hell of a debut. It would have been so easy just to make Vivian a hardened shrew, but that was not the case. Sitharaman's Vivian is one who is still allowed to act like a typical college student. She's catty, she's bratty, she's emotionally manipulative in ways that feel plausible. She honestly looks like she kinda takes a little bit of sick pleasure in embarrassing Elle. It makes Vivian's slow turn towards Elle's side more realistic that way. Another spoiler warning, after Callahan assaults Elle, Vivian is actually the first person to convince Elle to get back in court and win the case. It's a great example of musical theater character development that Sitharaman showed a full, complete understanding of, giving Vivian a much warmer presence than I've come to expect. I love too that her arc was made more convincing by the fact that even though Vivian and Warner are supposed to be dating, Aditi Sitharaman and Mason Ramsey, who plays Warner, have absolutely no chemistry whatsoever, which is clearly intentional. Same with Ramsey's connection to Grace Sydel. In fact, Mason Ramsey was just fantastic at making Warner this incredibly annoying upper crust sleazeball, comparable to those young millionaire alpha males that we love to hate on social media. The tactless attitude combined with the over concern for appearance, including the moments when Mason Ramsey tosses his soft bouncy hair like Prince Charming in the Shrek movies. He honestly makes the audience wonder what Elle even saw in this guy. This was actually the first time that I have seen Warner where I kind of realized Elle and Warner were probably set up by their families, and that Elle was essentially lying to herself the whole show about loving him because of internalized self-loathing. Kudos to Mason Ramsey for getting me to think about this character, who I've always just kind of seen as this MacGuffin to get Elle from point A to point B, on a level that was a lot deeper and more dramatically satisfying. The role of Paulette is played by Marcia Miller, and she is an utter delight. Miller actually shares the exact same level of exuberance as Grace Seidel, but was wise enough to start Paulette as being much less confident in herself, after being stuck in a bad relationship for years. Miller's vulnerability and kindness really makes Paulette hyping up Elle totally believable, and her wistfulness for a better life makes Miller's vocal performance of Ireland one of the highlights of the evening. Miller's rendition of the Bend and Snap was a real treat. You really got to see her just have fun, and she shows off some killer river dancing. On the opposite end of the spectrum is Jonathan Hay as the antagonist, Professor Callahan. Hay doesn't make his Callahan as venomous as I have known him to be, but what he does sell is Callahan's cynicism, hardness, and stuffiness, which is accurate to some college professors that I have known. Hay also didn't try to make Callahan a creep as much as an opportunist, a quality that he shares with Elle but in a more negative light, making for a great hero-villain pairing. Jonathan Hay also gets some brief moments as Elle's supportive, loving father, and he does well to make him more of a distinct character, making his movements and voice more loose and open than Callahan. Katie Orr is brilliant as Enid Hoops, bringing an authentic voice and personality to this very stereotypical recalcitrant lesbian, including her introduction that earned a great reaction from the opening night audience. She also has a fun turn as Courtney, the sales girl in the opening number, and Orr brilliantly captured her two-faced attitude. The moment when Elle catches onto Courtney's lies trying to sell an outdated dress was such a perfectly timed reaction from Orr. That was comedy gold. Fellow ensemble member Dawn Schmidt gets another major role in Brooke Wyndham, the jump rope fitness guru, whose murder case serves as the driving force for Act 2. She nails the jump rope sequence in Whipped into Shape. She pulls off the earnestness that is typical of a fitness instructor, and she develops a nice rapport with Seidel's Elle, confiding in her as a fellow Delta Nu sister. The other Delta Nu sisters appear throughout the show as a Greek chorus, because Greek life, it works. All of the sisters have such chipper personas. When they're trying to raise Elle's confidence, they're so entertaining because of how excitable they are, especially in their big song, Positive, and the leading part in the Bend and Snap. The main sisters are played by Natalie San as Serena, Lily Self-Miller as Margot, and Evon Lee as Pilar, with support from Ella Drake and production dance captain Molly Stout. Ensemble member Kyle Rudolph shows some unhinged swagger as Paulette's terrible ex-boyfriend Dewey, her current romantic interest Kyle, the sexy UPS man, and one of the boyfriends in There Right There, as well as Martin Ibarra, who also plays the insufferably priggish tech bro Aaron. Adi Kadam has loads of fun as Grandmaster Chad, the reggae soloist in What You Want, and the cocky Middle Eastern noble Sundeep. I don't know if either of those roles have really aged that well, but I'm really not the person to be the judge of that. Lauren Goudreau is also quite versatile in all of the mature female ensemble roles. Elle's mother, the retail manager in the opening number, the head of admissions at Harvard, and the judge for the Wyndham case. Something to note about this production is that there are no live dogs in this, as there traditionally is in Legally Blonde. We do hear Elle's chihuahua, Bruiser, barking up a storm, and Elle mentions him hiding in her purse. We also get to see a picture of Paulette and her dog, Rufus, created by photographer Florence Flick, that is proudly displayed at the hair affair. Though really that's more of a nitpick than anything else. Honestly, the fact that this production doesn't really have the bells and whistles that's typically associated with Legally Blonde doesn't matter. How many times have I said in this review, I love this? Tesseract Theater's production of Legally Blonde is one of the most easily lovable musical theater productions I've seen this year. The vision is creative, the staging is smart, the acting and the visual style of these iconic characters are lively. The score, which has practically been memed to death, is delivered with the exact same affection and attention that made it popular in the first place. Tesseract took something that I initially viewed as a cute young adult musical with good music and treated it with the same insight, maturity, and creativity that they do with all of their shows. This is proof that this company is only going to get better and better at creating large, epic stories in small theaters like this. And so far, Legally Blonde has been the culmination of everything Tesseract has learned about musical theater production. Both the stumbles that they have since improved upon and the triumphs that they've really cultivated. And one thing that Tesseract, I think, really finds success with is getting to the heart of the kind of theater that young adults need to see right now. And Legally Blonde's positive message of acceptance is one that people need to find comfort in. And I think that was taken so seriously at Tesseract. I can see this production being a comfort show for some people. It certainly was for me. Tesseract's Legally Blonde was a really nice bit of holiday cheer that I think everyone will love. What, like it's hard? For those of you who have seen Tesseract's production of Legally Blonde, what did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below and let me know. If you enjoyed hearing my thoughts about this show, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any more St. Louis musical theater productions coming very soon. Thank you so much to Tesseract Theatre for inviting me to see Legally Blonde, and thank you, the person watching this, for watching this video. Until next time, long live the musical!